In this video, I'm going to show you three things. What the average retirement savings is for a 60-year-old, if you're comparing that 60-year-old against a population of savers. I'm going to show you that same number if you add in the non-savers in this country. And I'm also going to show you what you should have at 60 years old to retire in the same lifestyle that you're living right now. Coming up next on Holy Schmidt.
Holy Schmidt!
So you're 60 years old, 5 to 7 years out from retirement, maybe a little bit more because of the pandemic that we're all in right now, and you want to know where you should be. Well, that's a very good question, and it's a very complicated question because the pool of 60-year-olds spans the gamut from those that have saved virtually every penny they've made up until this point in their life to those that have had massive financial obligations, are deep in debt, and don't have a dime, and everything in between. So let's talk about each one of these categories. First, let's talk about the average retirement savings for a 60-year-old when you're comparing that 60-year-old amongst a group of savers. This number comes directly from the Fidelity 401k balances, and it's quite accurate. It's a good representation of where folks are. Now, I want to point out two things. First, the difference between average and median. Now, let's say you had 5 different 60-year-olds, and in their 401k, one had $700,000, one had $100,000, the next one had $61,450, number 4 had $45,000, and number 5 had $17,550. This totals $924,000 amongst those 5 401k participants. And that gives an average balance of $195,500. Now, even though I'm showing you 5 balances here, I could easily have shown you 50, 5,000, or 5 million, and it would have looked very similar to this. The average balance for a 60-year-old in their 401k is $195,500, and the median balance is $61,450. So let's write these down. Average, 195.5k, median, 61,450. There are many problems with this information. If you went to fidelity.com and you got this information, and that's where it came from, most people watching this video would just call it a day. They'd say, there's no chance I'm going to live well in retirement. That's because retirement funds like Fidelity, Vanguard, etc. have a very strong interest in you depositing more into your account, which is of course good for you, but it's also good for them. So let's take this information. I'm just going to tell you what it actually means. The average balance of $195,500 is comprised of a few very large balances at the top. The flip side is this right here. 81% of Americans have less than $5,000 in savings. The problem is this number right here, the $700,000. We'll call those the trust fund 60-year-olds who had an advantage financially growing up. They didn't have the same bills that you might have had. And so therefore they were able to save a lot more and live off of something else, a trust fund. Maybe they lived at home until they were 50, who knows. But they were able to sock away a lot of money, but they don't represent the masses, but they do skew the number of the average way up. This number, the median, is the number that's more important here because this is the more accurate representation of where you probably should be if you're average. $61,450 in your 401k. Now, what happens if you overlay this population right here? 81% of Americans have less than $5,000 in their 401k. 81%. So that brings these numbers way down. In fact, the actual numbers, when you factor in the non-savers, are an average of $39,191 and a median of $15,725. 81% of the population has almost nothing. When you add that in, 39,191 is the average and the median is 15,725. The question is, what should you have? Well, they'll tell you it's 8x. 8x your current salary. So if you make $50,000 a year, you should have $400,000. Now before you shut the video off and pretend like you didn't turn it on, let's talk about this. This assumes two things. One, it assumes that you get a rate of return of 6.5% while you're working and 5% after. But more importantly, it assumes that you have the same exact expenses when you retire and therefore need the same exact income that you're making today. The fact of the matter is, when you retire, you won't have an endless mortgage that you need to pay off. You won't have college education for your kids. You may have already paid for your child's wedding. You might have already taken the funds that you needed to set aside to care for an elderly parent or a relative in need and put those aside and dealt with that. So at 65 years old, a lot of your expenses that you are paying for right now may or may not exist. Certainly by the time you get to 70, 75, 80, those expenses are going to drop way down. So while they say you should have 8x for your savings in order to achieve the same income that you have now in retirement at 6.5%, I actually think the number is about half that. I think it's about 4x. So don't worry if you don't have 8x. Don't even worry if you don't have 4x. If you don't have 195, 61, 39, or even 15,725, because there are things you can do now and even in retirement to help your income go up. We'll talk about those in an upcoming video. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up so that other people can find it as well. Also, don't forget to click subscribe and notifications down below, and that will alert you the next time I post a video. I try to post them twice a week. This is Jeff Schmidt. Thanks for watching.